concealing the fact that he was also working simultaneously for China. He could face up to 20 years in prison. The White House confirms it has been passing out cell phones to migrants crossing the U.S. southern border.
It's part of an alternative to detention program the administration is using. These migrants will get a check-in call, and then their voice is matched against a biometric voice print that they create during the enrollment process. Two other options are SmartLink, which uses facial recognition technology, and GPS ankle bracelets. But there's no way to stop these phones from being tossed in the trash, and the White House has painted the program as successful. Well, lawmakers are up in arms over plans to end Title 42 without a comprehensive immigration program in place, as DHS predicts as many as 18,000 crossings per day.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House as Texas braces for an expected new wave that the White House calls irregular immigration. The Texas National Guard has begun drills to practice techniques to turn the migrants around. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah, not even on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, not any time at all. So here we are on our least favorite day of the week. Jose and I do not like Fridays because it means that we're going to have to go into hibernation for 2 whole days. 70 hours to be exact, before we can get back together with you, our loyal tailgaters out there in the international radio listening audience. But somehow Jose and I just grit our teeth and make it through. And we'll do it this time too. Have no fear. The show must go on. Let's take a peek at Semi Yakutney and see what silliness the Daily News is up to today. Jose, I got to borrow your hard copy again. Oh, I guess it's right in front of me here. Good call, Jose. Yeah, I forgot to bring my printout copy. Let's see, what is the Daily News talking? I read it, but
I read it too, and I forgot it.
Pretty forgettable. Let's see here. I might even be able to find it. Yeah, here it is. Opt out. Yeah. Bill would help family violence victims exit phone plans. So this is really earth-shattering legislation, if there ever were earth-shattering legislation. A bill being considered by senators would allow victims of domestic violence to opt out of shared phone plans without fees, penalties, or the account owner's permission. Wow. That's right up there with the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. That's really groundbreaking stuff. Similar laws have been passed in Hawaii, California, Tennessee, Ohio, and New Jersey, and are under consideration in other states. The bill is a good one and could help people in dangerous situations on an island where family violence is far too common. Phones can provide domestic violence victims connections to family, supportive friends, employers, attorneys, law enforcement, but not the Attorney General, who's too busy. In other words, phones can be used to provide a means of escape. For abusers, they can also provide another way to have power over a victim. Controlling a victim's ability to communicate is one of the most coercive tactics in the book and remains a hidden risk for survivors of domestic violence. Bill 242, sponsor Mary Torres. I wonder if Mary Torres gets all of these Democrat bills to sponsor.
It's as if she has a red phone to somebody.
You mean a blue phone to somebody?
A blue phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Under most shared phone plans, individuals can't separate their numbers or be released from a plan without the account owner's permission. Abusers may use this shared account to access victims' call records or harvest their text messages or even their locations, Torres testified. The victims have to provide some sort of evidence that they are involved in a family violence situation, either a police report, an order of protection, or a signed affidavit from a licensed medical or mental health care provider, court employee, social worker, or victim's advocate. Now that makes a lot of sense, right? A guy is using his wife as a punching bag, right? So she's got to go find somebody to provide evidence that she's being used as a punching bag. And you know, from what we read, you're not going anywhere. You're not, let me see that paper. Crumple, 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 into the wastebasket it goes. I've used this before, but it kind of reminds me of what my dad told me about how to catch a robin. It's a great story. I'm going to tell it again. Everybody who's ever been to the Midwest in the springtime knows what a robin is. Robins are migratory birds, and they're usually the first birds that come north in the spring. So you know it's spring when you see your first robin. And people in places like Elkhorn, Wisconsin, chatter about it. Hey, I saw a robin yesterday. Wow, spring is finally here. So they're nice small birds with a red breast, and they're very tame. So they'll land and they'll be digging night crawlers out of the ground, and you could get up to within 4 or 5 feet of a robin without even trying. But you try to get any closer than that, away they go. So I was out in the yard one day, I must have been 5 or so with my dad, trying to catch a robin. And of course I couldn't. And I said, Dad, is there a way to catch a robin? And he said, yeah, just put salt on his tail and he won't be able to fly. So, of course, if you can get that, you know, you get it, right?
Got it.
And it's the same thing here. Yeah, what you need to do is get your ex or get your spouse or get to Stanley Kowalski.
Did you ask him, how do I get close enough to put salt on the tails? I get close enough to get through?
Well, once I got the answer, of course, I didn't have a salt shaker, so I wasn't able to give it a try, right? So it's kind of like this idea here. You're living with a wife beater, Stanley Kowalski or somebody like that, and so in order to get him off your phone, all you have to do is get one of these magic papers and turn it into the phone company. You wouldn't be able to call the phone company and do it that way. Kind of sneak into the ladies' room and call. You couldn't do it that way. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's easy to catch a robin. All you got to do is put salt on its tail. Yeah, it's easy to get Stanley Kowalski off your phone. All you have to do is have a signed paper from the Chief Justice to turn into the phone company. Yeah, nice try. The legislature. All right, let's move right on to the card. And this is what I have on today's card. Of course, I start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And, you know, we've talked before about Paul and Farron Tyrone and Elwin Quitano, etc. And then I've got Public Law 36-34, the Bar Association versus traffic on West O'Brien Drive. And I'm calling off the emergency there. I've got some really good news. But I'll wait till I get to that part of the card. I've got mayors versus transparency. Yeah, so I should say, if I wanted to do it in a different format, I think it would be mayors embracing opacity. Opacity is a sesquipetal word that means you can't see through it. It's opaque. Yeah. And then I've got Barbara Titano versus the governor, Troy versus the Neocats. Now there's a heavyweight fight right there.
Did you read that one? That was interesting.
Really. And then I've got Christopher Phillips versus CNN, Kenosha versus CRT, Tall Tales versus KBJ, and USA Today versus Nature. Starting out with Paul and systemic racism, I think everybody by now knows the difference between the truth or the facts and the narrative. And we can depend on certain elements in our community to be the Westpac distributors of the narrative, no matter what the facts or the truth is. And the number one distributor is our governor, Lou Leon Guerrero, who will tell you that if we don't wear our masks from now until hell freezes over, we're going to lose every single nickel that comes in from the federal treasury. Scaring the heck out of us, right? So Chris is going to have a public hearing, and I think Chris is going to give us the facts. But, of course, the facts in the face of the narrative oftentimes don't go very far, because the narrative has a certain coercive effect, with the implication that if you don't go along with the narrative, you might get silenced. Just like Paul Zerzan came out and said, you know, that stuff you serve at the fiesta, we serve at the fiestas, it ain't red, it's orange. And the Daily News comes back and says, leave our red rice alone. The attempts to silence Elwin Champaco Quitano on his theory of Chamorro has already begun. So far, Farron Tyrone has not had that many problems, but I suspect that he will. So that's Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. We next go to a regular part of the agenda. I wish we could get over this, but it appears that we can't. And that is the government boards and commissions. And we have some agencies that are both boards and commissions. Like the Civil Service Commission has a board, apparently.
They don't have to attend class. They don't have to go to the AOG, the Attorney General's office. They just have to tune into Tall Tales every day, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m.
That's it. It's painless. It's actually easy. It's fun. It's entertaining. You get a lot of laughs. You'll learn something.
I hear Lou's going to mandate it next year.
That's a good idea. So the first offender today is the Guam Preservation Trust. Item 4 on their agenda, new business. What new business? Well, just new business. When we get there, we'll entertain things we haven't entertained before and we'll take action on them if it pleases us. And then the other one is the Southern Soil and Water Conservation District that has, in today's agenda, still has item K, other. So I keep saying this every day, if you put that in your agenda, what it means is that whatever action you take during the meeting that the notice refers to is void. Because unless your notice is correct, the action is void. The Board of Commissioners of GURA is having a meeting on April 8th. Surprisingly, they got it pretty close to being right. They're having an executive session, and they didn't tell us what the executive session is about, so that could be enough to avoid it right there. Okay, let's go on to Guam Bar versus traffic on West O'Brien Drive. I did an announcement on Tuesday telling all and sundry that they should not drive down West O'Brien Drive on this afternoon between 3 and 9, 1500 to 2100, because the Bar Association's having its annual meeting and they're going to close off West O'Brien Drive, probably following the lead of the governor. And so there was this cautionary announcement. However, on Wednesday, the Bar Association said, time out, cancel that. We're not going to do that. So if you're out tooling around West O'Brien Drive right now, enjoy, because the bar canceled its meeting and is going to have it some other day when they're not expecting heavy rain, which will probably be in the year 2029 or so, I think, unless we move the bar meeting from here to Arizona.
Well, apparently nobody took meteorology as an elective in law school.
Probably not. Yeah, or biology for that matter. Yeah,
Biology.
Yeah. the least popular course in college, biology. Because they deal with these. And math is really hard unless some folks just have a knack, and they're just able to grab it very easily. I got as far as trigonometry and analytic geometry, but I worked my tail off. I worked harder on that than I ever did in law school. And I've dabbled in the calculus with an online course. I can't tell you that I can do it because it's tough. Math is really, really hard, but not anywhere near as hard as biology.
Well, once you tackle calculus, you're open to biology, which gives you a heightened enlightenment, so you can tell the difference between a man and a woman.
Wait, really?
That's what I heard.
Wow. That's about the only way you could ever get to that height of intellectual competence, though, Because I was about to say, this question of what is a woman? That's too hard for anybody, but somebody with at least a double PhD in biology. You can't, even Supreme Court justices don't know what it is.
No.
All right. So here's the mayor's versus transparency. And the headline is, "Honest is on us." Now that sounds like something I would say. Honest is on us. Oh yeah? How'd you see honest? Hafabidanya? Hafabidanya?
What color is it?
It sounds like a person, because Hannes is German for John. So back in my youth, I remember hearing the old folks talking about Uncle Hannes. So I figure it's some kind of German name. Honest is on us. It could almost be just a common sense statement. Honest is on us. It's just that you put the two words together. Honest is on us. Mayors receive OAG guidance on open government law compliance. Mayors can use their portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to pay for public notices in advance of their municipal planning council meetings, at least during fiscal 2022, to comply with the open government law requirements. Sounds good. That was among key messages from Mayor's Council Guam Executive Director Angel Sablan during Thursday's in-person meeting of mayors after several months of via Zoom. So that was among the key messages, right up there with Jesse Bloss is really a great guy. He's going to get out of prison pretty soon, and let's all try real hard to find him a job in one of the mayor's offices, because he's like a brother to me. And if you don't believe me, go back and find my testimony at his sentencing hearing. This cost is considered in the Mayor's Council's proposed fiscal 2023 budget, Sablan said. Quote, the onus is on us to make it happen. So the poet laureate of the Mayor's Council is none other than Angel Sablan. The onus is on us to make it happen, Sablan said, after mayors once again raised their concerns about the additional costs on their operations. Now, here's the key word, just to make public notices of upcoming meetings. Just to make public, how silly can you get? That's the only reason we're doing it, just to give the public notice of our meetings. How silly. The Office of the Attorney General recently provided guidance to mayors about the open government law in response to Sablan's request for a legal opinion. Mayors on Tuesday continued to raise concern about this, quote, unfunded mandate. Now, that's a word I don't ever want to hear on tall tales. Unfunded mandate. It's a word that people toss around as though it had a meaning and as though they know what it means. And it's a crutch. You know, it's an easy way of saying, I really don't like something because it costs money. Yeah. Unfunded mandate imposed on mayors and municipal planning councils. At the meeting, mayors said it cost nearly $400 to issue public notices about a municipal planning council's meeting in the print and broadcast media for one meeting. That translates to nearly $5,000 a year.
You don't say.
Which we could easily be used on junkets to the Philippines to play golf.
That's a lot of strawberries.
It is. This also holds true for the Mayor's Council, which meets at least once a month and sometimes twice when there's need for a special meeting. Mayors and the municipal planning councils of each of the villages are required to comply with the open government law's requirement for public notices about their upcoming meetings, the OAG said. Now, the Office of the Attorney General told him this. Not a person, not a lawyer, certainly not the Attorney General. Perhaps Katlina Chatfris, who is the spokesperson for the OAG, Katlina Chatfris.
But they would have said that, right?
You would have thought so, yeah. Now, here's a loophole. There are exemptions, including a committee meeting about a village mayor's hosting of an Easter egg hunt. So if your municipal planning council has an Easter egg hunt committee and they meet, they don't have to publish a notice. That's a gigantic loophole. It's so big you could drive a semi-truck through it. As a general rule, meetings of subcommittees do not require that notice of their meetings be published, the OAG said. That general rule, however, is subject to whether, quote, action takes place during these meetings. So if you just get together and talk about something, no. If you get together and say, I move that we buy all of our eggs from Flores Poultry Farm, and that actually happens, then you got to give public notice. If you're going to take action, the public's got to know about it. The Mayor's Council also posed a question related to meetings that do not require a quorum, but actions or decisions are made by a vote of those present. Now, how do you vote on something when you don't have a quorum? The OAG said any meeting of the majority of a public agency, including the mayor's council, where action is taken or decisions requiring a vote are made, must be in a properly noticed public meeting. I'm going to give a little guidance here. When in doubt, spread it out. That being the notice. Any decisions made or action taken pursuant to a meeting that is not properly noticed are void, the OAG wrote in this letter to Sablon. The law says each member of the public agency who attends a meeting of a public agency where action is taken in violation of the law, with knowledge of the fact that the meeting is in violation thereof, is guilty of a misdemeanor. And the nice thing about this is that everybody who was at that meeting is now not going to be able to plead ignorance. Even the mayor of Molesso, who sees any matters of law in terms of airborne waterfowl, the equal protection of geese of either sex, or of all sexes, maybe is better. Yeah, so they aren't going to be able to say, well, I didn't know we weren't supposed to do that. In order to avoid running, was it my timing good or not? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. In order to avoid running afoul of the law, we advise all public agencies remain mindful that the purpose of subcommittees is not to take action or make final decisions, but to conduct research, prepare reports, or make recommendations. Good guidance. President of the Mayor's Council, who's nothing but a smart aleck, Mayor Jesse Alec, Mayor of Petey, said mayors are all for transparency and accessibility, but there's an existing issue about the lack of resources to do that. If we spend money on these notices, we're not going to be able to take as many junkets to the Strawberry Festival, Alex said. At the mayor's meeting, Sablon said it's not enough that mayors advertise in the newspaper, radio, or TV, but they also have to register with or notify the Government of Guam Office of Technology, so the notice will be posted online at notices.guam.gov. Common sense requirement. The OAG wrote that public notice for the purposes of the open government law requires publication in both the newspaper or on radio or TV, and publication on the Guam public notice website. And I think what it means is you got to put it in the paper and on the website both. If a municipal planning council is to host a meeting because a public hearing is required by another agency, such as the Department of Land Management for zone change applications, now here's a quote. Quote, the Department of Land Management is responsible, close quote, to pay for the public notices based on the AG opinion. So all of these hybrid meetings that require input from the Mayor's Council, Land Management will pay for those. Other mayors said it's not just the posting of public notices, but also making sure the actual meetings are accessible to the general public, such as live streaming the meetings. All right, let's take a short break, and I'll come back and wrap this up and probably entertain another Joe. No, Ken LG. Okay, who has a question about the open government law. As soon as I wrap this up, we'll get to you, Ken.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. For those put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk, and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are. This is an article about the mayors kvetching about having to give notices of their meetings. Now, ordinarily, this would cause people to say, what are they afraid of? What don't they want the public to know about? Their next junket? So some mayors, picking up with this, other mayors said it's not just the posting of public notices, but also making sure the actual meetings are accessible to the general public, such as live streaming the meetings. Some mayors' offices don't have the necessary equipment to live stream their municipal council meetings. Now, this gets me back into my rant about when you have a leadership position or you want to be seen as a leader, it's your job to solve problems. Just identifying the problem and then say it's telling your customers that it's insoluble is not leadership. That's non-performance. So if you don't have the necessary equipment, then get the necessary equipment. And it's just not that hard. We've got Ken on the line here. If you got hold of Ken Leon Guerrero, he could do your live streaming on his phone, for crying out loud. I've seen him do it. I've seen him live stream his village meetings for his referendum on his phone. So is there anybody in the mayor's council who has a cell phone? No, they're still back to a long piece of kite string with 2 tin cans on either end, right? Yeah, so, a little creativity here, a little bit of let's get the job done here, mayors. But the answer remains, you have to do it, Sablon told the mayors. You got to do it. It's not an option. This is not one of those where a good excuse is every bit as good as a performance, which so often with the mayors, Mayor Ajigo is a classic example. Just a little diversion here. They finally got out and chopped down the boonies from just about the entrance, from about Payless all the way down to the border with Dedido. And it really makes Dedido look like a mess, of course. But they didn't clean it up. So you got these ugly vines, and they didn't chop everything down there, still some stuff sticking up. Yeah. So they didn't do a workmanlike job. And once again, everybody in Jigo who works for the mayor's office, especially the mayor, this weekend, drive down to Inalahan and see what a village really looks like. And then come back and do the same thing in Jigo. All right, back to this article here. So Sablon said, you got to do it. Now, here's my real disappointment in this whole article here. Orda Chalanpago Mayor Jesse Gogui, who is in my good guy list. Jesse, I wish Jesse were the mayor of my village. He's a good guy. He's effective. He's efficient, and he's a Marine Corps officer. It just doesn't get any better than that. And this is what he says. Jesse Gogui said the long-term solution would be to amend the law. Of course, if you can't meet the standard, lower the standard. This reminds me of Judy Wonpat 10 when she was still a senator, and she wanted to fix the Every Child Act. And one of the provisions in the Every Child Act is that classroom temperatures must never exceed 78 degrees of sensible temperature. Now, if you got a low humidity day and a nice wind blowing through the classroom, you got a wet bulb, dry bulb, thermometer, etc., you can get down below 78 without air conditioning pretty easily. So she wants to amend the law by saying that the temperature must be 78 degrees. Right? And if it's one of those rainy, windy days when the temperature drops to 75, you better have one of those convertible air conditioners so you can turn on the heat. And then with respect to the safe sanitary part of the Every Child Act, she would allow the education Sir-Ohano to change the standards. So I wrote a column for the Daily News at that time when she did this, and my tagline in the column was, "If we can't fix it, it ain't broke." Yeah, so that's the theory here. You know, if the standard is something, you know, if you have to reach to meet the standard, well, that's easy. Just lower the standard or junk the standard, right? So this is a direct quote from Jesse. "It's all these unfunded mandates that drive me nuts. They're increasing our costs. Are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul? It impacts our ability to do our job." Tells me one thing. He doesn't know what his job is. His job is to work in such a manner that the people know what he's doing, and communicating with his constituents is his job. It's not some niggling little detail that keeps him from really important things, you know, like taking the day after Thanksgiving off or something like that. All right, I'm really sorry when I saw him and what I saw Jesse Gogi saying. Okay, let's hear what. Let's see what Ken's got on his mind today. Go for it, Ken.
Well, the Mayor's Council of Guam is the poster child for why we need the open government law. Because if you'll remember, January 2019, when the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration took office, one of the first things they did is they gave pay raises out to directors, deputy directors, and exempt employees. And in a meeting at the Mayor's Council, Angel Sablan complained that he didn't get a raise and all those other people did, and the mayors felt sorry for him. And so they gave him a $22,000 pay raise. Now, when you add benefits and everything to that, that's costing the taxpayers over $30,000 a year pay raise. There are people on this island that don't even make $30,000, and we're giving a guy who already got 2 illegal pay raises a third pay raise. So then just a couple of years, he goes from $45,000 to over $100,000, and it was all done in council meetings, mayor's council meetings with no notice. Just imagine how many people would have been there to testify if there had been a notice. On the agenda today, we want to give Angel Sablan $30,000 pay raise, including benefits.
But you know, Ken, the important thing about that was that the mayor of Jonia supported him 100%. Go ahead.
Yeah, so did a lot of mayors, unfortunately, which says a lot about the situation. And then we go to the mass transit system. I was dumbfounded when I found out that the mass transit system authorized purchase of vehicles using federal funds. Okay, that's all right. But they paid $75,000 each vehicle that was selling in the Sunday paper in LA Times for $22,000 MSRP. And nobody pays manufacturer's suggested retail price on a car. Yet we paid almost 4 times the retail price. And so when I went to then Senator Tom Atta, who is in charge of governmental operations, to complain about this, he said, well, you know, they had to ship them here. Well, it cost, at that time, it was $1,850.
You could have bought the ship for that price.
Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up paying 4 times. And just imagine if they had properly noticed the meeting, because the way the government agencies do a notice now, agenda, approval of meetings, new business, old business, comments from public, adjournment. What does that tell you?
Well,
you know?
most of them are getting it right. It's just a few serial offenders that don't get it right. And to me, that is one of the most informative parts of the paper, to see what these agencies are doing with my money.
Absolutely. And if we had a real attorney general, he'd be all over those agencies and departments for being out of compliance with the law. If we had a real attorney general.
Of course.
So that's why we're you know, I know I'm beating this drum like quite hard, but everybody listening to this international broadcast needs to call Guam Election Commission or go online and make sure you're still registered. Because in the process of collecting signatures, I'm finding out that maybe about 2 or 3 out of 10 who thought they were registered really aren't. So everybody listening needs to make sure that you're registered. And if you're not registered, you go online and register and check with all your friends and family to make sure they're registered. Because, you know, there's an old saying, bad politicians are elected by good people who don't vote.
I think it's a 3-step process, Ken. Let me see if I got it right. 1, check and see if you are registered. If you're not, register. After you're registered, vote for Ken. Is that right? If I got it?
I wish, but there are a lot of good candidates out there, and they all tend to be on the news side. There are a couple of current incumbents that I think are trying hard to serve the people, but we need to get new faces in the legislature. We need to break that sense of entitlement. Now, when I'm talking about sense of entitlement, I'm talking about, you know, the large, lavish staffs, the brand new office furniture, and campaigning on government time. Because anytime you issue a resolution congratulating Ken Cruz on 18 years of marriage, or congratulating somebody on 19 months of continuous employment, or congratulating GPA for existing, all those are campaign ads paid for by taxpayers.
Ken, where do you stand on part-time legislature?
I stand fully in favor of a part-time legislature. We have one right now. We just pay full-time price for it. Because going back to my days as a community advocate, whenever I tried to meet with senators, 90% of the time they're not there. Oh, they're at a wedding, they're at a funeral, they're at a fundraiser, they're having lunch with their friends. If they're going to be full time, they should be there full time. They shouldn't be driving hearses without taking paid leave. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
and of course,
why are we paying them to run their own businesses?
Exactly. And I think that's the only way we're going to break the cycle, is that because many people, if not most of the people run, are looking for a $55,000 job with abundant perks. And if you take that away, then you cancel out that whole group of candidates, and you're going to get down to people that are really serious to say, I want to run maybe 1 or 2 terms, and the reason I do is because I've got some ideas about some legislation that I think that would be good for the island and for the people, and maybe even for me.
A good example of that is Michael Impiaco. He ran for 1 term. He said he was going to run for 1 term. He ran for 1 term. You said you were going to do 2 terms. You did 2 terms. And do your civic duty and then go on with your life. That's the way this system of government was envisioned by our founding fathers. They didn't see full-time professional politicians enriching themselves on the public dime the way we have a system now. They designed a system that appealed to those that felt a sense of duty, felt a sense of service. And we have so many people.
And that's why we have elections in the fall after the crops have been brought in. And that's why we inaugurated new presidents in March. Roosevelt was inaugurated in March of 1933. The first session of Congress after that met in November. It wasn't let's move in Washington and have a cottage back in the district, but that's what it's turned into. And we think that we have to do the same thing here. That we have to have people who are drawing enough money to live on to show up where they're never accountable for anything and basically don't do much of anything.
I think back to the 70s and early 80s when we had a part-time legislature and we had 21 senators, and many of them served out of a sense of duty. People like Al Israel, Alan Sack, Frank Lujan. You know, I remember when they used to have meetings, you know, like at 6 o'clock in the evening, you know, because they were busy doing their jobs during the day. But during the time the legislature was in session, they adjusted.
If you don't buy from me, we both lose.
Yeah,
if you
we
don't,
both lose.
If you don't vote for me, we both lose, said Alan Sack. Hey, got a break. Take a break, Ken, but I'm glad you called in, and you're right on point as usual.
Well, I'm still enjoying the show, even though I'm getting ready for my State of the Island tomorrow. So I'll talk to you soon.
Break a leg.
Rental complex. We have over 20 employees, and when the pandemic hit, our concerns were people not being able to work, loss of revenue and income, and luckily, due to PPP, we were able to keep all our employees employed, working. We were able to provide services, maintenance, and cleanliness for the building and the operation. Also, the rental assistance program helped us stay solvent during the pandemic and helped us keep the tenants in place.
We're thankful for Congressman San Nicolas advocating for these funds on our behalf in Washington, D.C.
If you have any concerns about any federal issues, feel free to contact your congressman's office.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
All right, so here we are. Ken just unloaded on us here about his thoughts about the open government law, and I it's very difficult for me to argue with someone who is so well informed about issues like that. And Angel Sablon, I checked the statute. I don't see what authority the mayor's council had to give him that raise. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because guess who made the motion to give him that gigantic raise? None other than the mayor of Gigo.
Of course.
Not the current mayor, but Rudy Montanani when he was the mayor. So, you know, we can't take care of the village. We can't cut the. We got to have a Tongan forest alongside Marine Corps Drive. That we can do, but we can't put notices of our meetings in the newspaper. That's just asking too much.
Was there a law that created this council?
There is a law, and it's interesting. I've talked about this on the show before. The council has no duties. You know, it's created. It can
D-U-T-I-E-S.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it can enact its own rules and regulations, elect its officers, etc. But it doesn't say set the salary for the executive director. It doesn't.
It's like a subcommittee.
Yeah, it's like a boondoggle is what it is. And we don't need it. You know, if there were ever a part of the government that's superfluous, it's the mayor's council, because mayors' jobs are pretty much limited to the confines of the village in which they are elected. And the office goes all the way back to the naval government. You younger folks wouldn't remember when mayors were called commissioners. They were called commissioners, and during the naval administration, they were appointed by probably the military governor, and it was their job to be kind of the voice and eyes of the naval governor in every village. And if your yard was a mess, they come along, hey, clean it up, you know. You don't need to have 3 dead couches in your 3 dead couches and a dead refrigerator in your front yard. Just shows how unacculturated the Navy was, right? So so then when the Organic Act came along, then we went with the same thing with village commissioners elected for 4 years, et cetera. And it's really hard to figure out what their duties are. It's kind of up to them, which for many of them means not very much. But if they have a function, it's to be the voice and face of the government at the village level. So if the government's not working for you, one of the things you're supposed to be able to do is tell the mayor, hey, the street light on my street is out, Mr. Mayor. And he's supposed to say, I'm on it, and do something about it. But ordinarily, the mayor's response is, oh, that's the Department that's the Guam Power Authority. He'll have to call them. And they'll refer you right back to the mayor, of course, you know. So that's what they're supposed to do. And when things don't work well for their village, then they should be downtown pounding on somebody's desk. As an example, it's Public Works' responsibility to maintain the numbered highways. The mayors do the non-numbered highways. So you're pretty well aware of the mess that Marine Corps Drive is, right? You would think that the mayor of Jigo and Datado would be over at Vince's office, pounding on the desk, say, clean up Marine Corps Drive. I'm going to do the village, you do the Marine Corps Drive. But it just isn't happening. So I just don't feel sorry for them at all. You know, that this is such a burden to place on them to actually have to give notice of when they're meeting and what they're going to be meeting about. Okay, next item on the card, Barbara Titano et al. Versus the governor. A nice little Latin abbreviation, ETAL period. The full phrase would be et alia, and it means and others. So Barbara Titano and others versus the governor. So you learned something today, right? You learned another Latin abbreviation that lawyers use. The governor stated this week that public safety in Guam has improved, but several in the community disagreed. Several in the community? How about 99.9% of the people? Barbara Titano of Chalanpago said the island definitely isn't safe. You can see it in the papers, Tyrone said. Not only that, you hear it from neighbors, friends, and families who say things. So they're not safe and I'm not safe. But for me, I leave it to the Lord. Timberland Cruz of Mongmong shared Titano's sentiments. Not really, with all the deaths going on. I wouldn't even allow my kids outside of my house, Cruz said. Governor Leon Guerrero on Wednesday said her administration is addressing the uptick in crime by recruiting more police officers. She said the recent 18% salary increase for law enforcement officers will help retain and recruit the much-needed staff to go out there. Leon Guerrero also applauded efforts of the local neighborhood watch groups. The Guam Police Department has been working with village neighborhood watch programs and in the last few weeks has held public safety meetings to hear residents' concerns. Now, I understand that the village where Steve Ignacio lives are really concerned about theft of motorcycles. And Steve is so concerned that he's asked the precinct to do routine checks on his motorcycle. Neighborhood watch groups have created WhatsApp chat groups and Facebook pages to keep track of crimes occurring in their neighborhood or to post their own calls for help when thieves get into their homes and leave with household items, jewelry, cars, or bikes. It's not safe enough, said Peter Barrigas of Datado when asked for his thoughts on the safety of the community. There's a lot of stolen cars. Manila resident Gina Hatter. Now, if I ever had the chance to talk to Gina, you know what I would say?
What would you say?
I would inquire about anger. What would I say, Jose?
Are you mad?
Hatter. She said she thinks the amount of crime has gotten worse lately, but attributes that at least in part to the pandemic and more people staying home. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and I'm going to come back to Gina Hatter and see if she's still angry.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Claims of more atrocities on Jack Callahan, Fox News. The mayor of Bucha, on the outskirts of the Ukrainian capital Kiev, says they found 3 more mass graves filled with what he says are civilians killed by Russian troops. And just up the road, crews digging through the rubble in the village of Borodyanka are finding more horrific discoveries, according to President Zelensky.
It's much worse there. Even more victims of the Russian occupiers. And what will happen when the whole world learns what the Russian military did in Mariupol?
Ukraine says it aims to set up 10 humanitarian corridors today to try and evacuate trapped civilians. Russia has been suspended from the United Nations Human Rights Council in a vote in the General Assembly, even as Moscow admits for the first time their invasion hasn't gone according to plan.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov telling Sky News, "We have had significant losses of troops in Ukraine, and it's a huge tragedy for us."
Fox's Griff Jenkins in western Ukraine. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has tested positive for the coronavirus just days after hugging President Biden at the White House. Press Secretary Jen Psaki says federal health officials have assured them it is not a concern.
Their definition of it is 15 minutes of contact within a set period of time and within 6 feet. It did not meet that bar.
At least 7 other members of Congress have also tested positive this week. The president celebrating with his Supreme Court nominee on Thursday.
Ketanji Brown Jackson has been confirmed as the 116th Supreme Court justice and the first black woman to serve on the high court.
At every step of her upbringing and career, Ketanji Brown Jackson ranked among the highest of achievers.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer ahead of a 53-47 vote. 3 Republicans joining all 50 Democrats in support of confirming Jackson. Vice President Kamala Harris presided over the vote.
Fox's Jared Halpern. America is listening to Fox News.
Here at Nimitz Towers, we're a large-scale rental complex. We have over 20 employees, and when the pandemic hit, our concerns were people not being able to work, loss of revenue and income, and luckily, due to PPP, we were able to keep all our employees employed, working. We were able to provide services, maintenance, and cleanliness for the building and the operation. Also, the rental assistance program helped us stay solvent during the pandemic, helped us keep the tenants in place.
We're thankful for Congressman San Nicolas advocating for these funds on our behalf in Washington, D.C.
If you have any concerns about any federal issues, feel free to contact your congressman's office.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Texas preparing for next month's end of Trump-era immigration restrictions.
Guard running drills in Mission, Texas, designed to simulate how they would respond to a mass migration event.
Move back! Move back!
The drills ordered by Texas Governor Greg Abbott in preparation for the lifting of Title 42 next month. Hundreds of soldiers and heavy equipment, all part of the drills, which took place in other border hotspots as well. They're meant to prepare the state for whatever comes after May 23rd.
Forward!
That is when Title 42 goes away. And DHS projects the border could see up to 18,000 illegal crossings every single day.
Fox's Bill Maluzhin at the border. The U.S. has sharply increased the number of Ukrainians being admitted into the country at the Mexican border, even as more refugees fleeing the Russian invasion follow that same circuitous route. A government recreation center in Tijuana had about 1,000 Ukrainian refugees waiting yesterday. The Biden administration has said it would take up to 100,000 Ukrainians who've been displaced by the war. Another state's legislature is taking up the issue of transgender children.
The Alabama House of Representatives has approved sweeping legislation that outlaws gender-affirming medications for transgender children and has advanced legislation that would prohibit classroom instruction on sexual and gender identity in early grades. Representative Neil Rafferty, the only openly gay member of the Alabama legislature, calls the bill wrong and said it undermines family rights. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says LGBTQ kids can't be erased or forced back into any closet.
And kids across our nation should be allowed to be who they are without the threat that their parents or their doctor could be imprisoned simply for helping them and loving them.
The Southern Poverty Law Center and other legal and LGBTQ groups have announced they will sue should Governor Kay Ivey sign the bill into law. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Half a day. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Gas prices continue to rise, and we are here to help. We have revised Programan Salapi to provide a $300 direct cash assistance payment to most households. We heard your struggle, and we hope this relief will help during these difficult times. Applications will be accepted starting Tuesday, March 15, 2022. For more information, visit doa.guam.gov.
This ad is paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Hey, what did the grilled cheese sandwich say to their date?
What'd they say?
You make me melt.
Oh, so cheesy.
But not as cheesy as Subway's latest Eat Fresh, Refresh menu innovation. The new Fresh Melts with 3 times the cheese. Fresh Melts are the cheese lovers' holy grail. Fresh Melts combine freshly baked breads and your favorite meats topped with a triple load of cheese. All grilled to warm, toasty perfection. Try the ham and cheese melt, tuna melt, or steak and cheese melt to start. Best of all, you can make any footlong into a fresh melt. At Subway, eat fresh.
So here we are, another great halftime show on Tall Tales, the marching bands, the drill teams, the synchronized card sections, and the bleachers. It just doesn't get any better than that. And we're going to come right back to the card here, which is titled Barbara Titano and Others versus the Governor. As the governor said, you know, we've done a lot. The crime situation in Guam is getting better. And the reporter for the Post went out and beat the bushes to see if he could find anyone who agreed with the governor. And he got, 155,000 folks on the island. He wasn't able to find that one. One of the people who was interviewed was Gina, also known as the Mad Hatter. Gina Hatter said she thinks the amount of crime has gotten worse lately. It seems there's more violence in the paper, a lot, Hatter said. Barragata resident Cindy Lynn and others echoed that sentiment. From what I've seen in the news, not really. It's getting worse, Lynn said. They're attacking older people. Oh, they're getting my attention now. They're attacking older people, and there's a lot of robberies even in the post office now. Some people noted the efforts made to protect the island. I think law enforcement is doing all they can with what they have to work with. I believe it's pretty decent, said Pasquat Uggan of Santa Rita, Sumai. Fellow Santa Rita resident Pete Besipolo added, I know that crime is a little down right now. Dozens of readers shared similar comments on the Guam Daily Post Facebook page about the initial story published Thursday. A number of people disagreed with the governor's take on public safety. When the governor was asked about this, she had one comment to make. Off with their heads. Quote, Guam is not safer. If our island was safer, then why recruit more officers? The governor said, good question, as she eyed the hole in her foot. She just contradicted her own statements. Look at all the crimes being committed, said Teresa Garcia. Not when rapists, druggies, and violent offenders, murderers are released. People stealing from homes in broad daylight, said Sasha Wine.
Note H.
No H in wine, yeah. And she's not whining. So after Sasha said that, you know what everybody who was around her said? I'll drink to that. With due respect, Governor, it's easy to feel safe with police officers as your bodyguards. Now, Bonnie Suba asked the question, let's see if I can find it. Chief of police has the right to use the police department as his private security for his home? That's a question. That's right, Bonnie. Yeah, I ran that story. It's probably been close to a year now, where the chief told this story. He said he has a motorcycle that he parks in his carport. And he said he noticed when he came home one day that someone had taken the cover off his motorcycle and maybe was tampering with it. And then one of his neighbors said, you know, someone came into your carport and was touching your motorcycle. So the chief said, what I did was I called the local precinct and asked them if they could spare somebody to do an occasional patrol check on my house. And then he said, I don't want people to think that because I'm the chief, I get special treatment. I'm just saying that we've got to be on the lookout for this. He actually said that. Bonnie Suba. So, yeah, and that's why from time to time, every time the chief said something ridiculous, which is almost every time he says something, like there was no cover-up at Jerry Kitchen. He knew that from the get-go. Yeah, I tend to bring that back because that is the essence of what we don't want from public officials. The tall tales rule is this. If you are a public official, public resources are at your disposal. You should never use public resources to scratch your own itch, if you see what I mean. But that's what the chief did. You can't blame him. He didn't want somebody to steal his motorcycle. How would that look? Chief of police's motorcycle stolen? Yeah. So then we have the governor saying, yeah, it's safer because she can feel safe with police officers as their bodyguards. Don't patronize the people of Guam and their concerns by saying, I do believe Guam is safer. You're living in a bubble completely disconnected from the people, said Samantha James Miranda. Boy, I don't know, with this cancel culture, do you think we should give Miranda a warning?
It's her right.
You have a right to remain silent when the governor's around. Anything you say, she'll use against you. Quote, you have your positive comments and you have your ignorant moments. Guam is not safe. I repeat, we are not safe. Crime is on the rise, particularly with sexual offenders and family violence, which drug use also plays a major role, so thereby increasing the crimes of drug possession. Let's be honest with ourselves, ma'am. Spend 1 week actually living in the lives of those in crime-riven neighborhoods, and you tell me if Guam is safe. Samantha James Miranda. Yeah. So she just read the governor her Miranda rights. Good going, Samantha.
She didn't say you have a right to remain silent. She said, please, remain silent.
Uh-huh. Okay, next on the card, I've got Troy versus the Neocats. And this is the main event. I mean, you talk about a couple of heavyweights. Now, Troy has Candid News, and the Neocats have Diana. Diana has her own blog, and it's called Neo-Catechumenal Way, an Insider's View. And it's oftentimes quite entertaining, but not in the same way as Troy's blog is, because if Troy's blog could be characterized as doing anything, it's kind of giving you the unvarnished truth and facts. He doesn't try to pretty things up or, pitch any softballs or something like that. It's pretty raw. Diana is pretty raw when she's criticizing people that criticize the Neocats. Other than that, she is a great apologist for everything the Neocats do.
And she does it very badly. I just want to say what cracks me up initially is she could even spell neo-catechumenal in the title of her blog.
Kind of tells you a little bit about the lady. Huh? Yeah. So, the Neocats are still, they're kind of pulling a Stacey Abrams on Archbishop Afrin. Did you know that Stacey Abrams really won the gubernatorial election in Georgia? She didn't lose. Just because the other guy had more votes than her doesn't mean that she lost. And the Neocats are still saying Afrin didn't do anything wrong. It's all a bum rap. They just went out and set him up for this fall. Now, of course, those who spent a little time learning about the Neo-Catechumenal Way know that Archbishop Afrin was a Neocat, and he was a member of the Second Agania community. And the way the Neocats are organized, they're organized into communities up to about 50 people. And communities have responsibles and catechists. And they're the folks that crack the whip for the folks in the community. There's a lot of control that goes on there. Detractors of the Neocats will say it's a cult. And there's a high degree of obedience demanded. That's what they say. I've never been there. I don't have firsthand knowledge, but that's what I understand. And in the Second Agania community, there was a Neocat, not a responsible, not a catechist, just a regular member named Brother Tony, also known outside the Neo-Catechumenal Way as Archbishop Anthony A. Apparon. So he was just another guy as far as the Neocats were concerned. So Troy gets into this. Troy really, in legal testimony, there's something called a declaration against interest. And I won't go into all of the mechanics of it, but if a person testifies and in the process of testimony, he kind of rats himself out, sort of like, yeah, I robbed the bank, so I know that the alarm was not set on the safe. Well, you could pretty well rely on his testimony about the alarm on the safe because he's made a declaration against interest, right? So there's some kind of declarations against interest in Troy's piece here. But I'm going to go to some of the parts that I think are really interesting. He said, I was dating a guy who worked at a bank where we had a joint account. The guy's aunt was a candidate for governor at the time. Now, I wonder who that could have been. Who could have been working at a bank and had an aunt running for governor? One of, let's see, one of Madeline Berdallo.
No, it wasn't Madeline.
Yeah, well, Madeline ran for governor.
At the time?
No, not at that. That was a long time ago. Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah. I was dating a guy who worked at a bank where we had a joint account. His aunt was a candidate for governor at the time. I had no intention of being involved in any campaign. I just wanted to leave the governor's office, Governor Calvo, and open my news company before Eddie Calvo left office. Events hastened that plan when in late July 2017, I was first attacked by the very administration I loved and was very loyal to. I took a leave of absence to figure things out, then returned in mid-August to let the then Chief of Staff, Mark Calvo, know I was resigning. I thought everything was just fine. I was going to start my news company. Yay! I waited for my annual leave cash out, and I applied for the money that was investing in my portfolio at the retirement fund. That was to be my seed money to start my company. 2 weeks later, on September 1, 2017, I got a call in the morning from Sabrina Salas Matanani, who is, one of the real journalists on the island. She has been at KUAM, yeah. She goes all the way back to cable news, back in the days when I had my own show on cable news. So she's a pro. I got a call from Sabrina Matanani, who wanted to know if I was okay. I thought that was odd. I said, yes, why? She told me the newsroom at KUAM was flooded with phone calls from people asking whether KUAM was going to cover the criminal complaint filed against me for criminal sexual conduct. Now I'm going to introduce a term that some folks perhaps haven't heard. It's called phone banking. We don't. I got to put that into the rules of. We don't allow phone banking here. Phone banking means that you give a script to half a dozen people and tell them to call the talk show host, call the talk shows, and say this every time you get the chance. It's called phone banking. And sometimes it's so inartful that you can tell it's phone banking because the phone banker doesn't even know what he's talking about, can't handle even the most mild question. But, when you have a dozen people calling the newsroom asking the same question, that's not coincidence. That's phone banking, right? I told Sabrina it must be some prank. I had never sexually assaulted anyone. As a matter of fact, I told her I was a victim of rape when I was 13 years old, and he's laid that out on his website too. Name the name and the whole thing. Pause for a moment and consider the time this all happened. This was September 1st, 2017. A few months prior to that day, my now former boss, Governor Eddie Calvo, signed into law the Frank Blas statute that made it possible for victims of sex crimes to sue entities like the Archdiocese of Acania that failed victims and covered up these sex crimes. The bill that listed the statute of limitations.
Silent no more.
Laity Forward movement, Concerned Catholics. 54 Sundays of picket line. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I penned the governor's 4-page letter to the speaker explaining that he signed the measure into law despite heavy lobbying from priests to veto it. By the time Sabrina called me that September morning, Anthony Apparon had been suspended from his office by the Vatican for more than a year, and victims of sex abuse by priests and teachers within the archdiocese had begun to sue him. Within minutes of Sabrina's call, Gaynor Dumont Ol Delano from the Pacific Daily News, now the Post, called to check on me as well. 10 or 12, 11 phone calls came into the newsroom that morning, she said. More phone banking, right? Callers were asking if they're going to cover this story that Eddie Calvo's former senior advisor and communications director was forced out of the governor's office because of the criminal complaint that I committed a sex crime against someone. This sounds like one of the episodes out of Pulp Fiction, doesn't it?
Keep in mind, he's learning about this through the news, the media.
Yeah, not in person. There were no other details. I was completely in the dark, but I was able to tell both KOM and the PDN that none of this is true because I had never committed a sex crime against anyone. So I asked my former lieutenant at the governor's office, Oyel Nyarakalo, if she could find out what this was all about. She called back and told me someone filed a police report at the Agate precinct that in 1996, I and two others had sex with a 16-year-old. I was 15 and 16 in 1996. Oya told me the police didn't know what to do with the complaint because the allegations happened 21 years prior. Another source told me who the complainant was. I won't divulge his name, mainly because he's a basket case and a closet case. So he's a homosexual living in the closet. Troy doesn't want to out him. The source also told me the name of one of the other two people in the closet case accused of sexually assaulting him, Gerald Lujan, the youngest son of attorney David Lujan. Is it starting to kind of fit together a little bit now? Yeah.
This was a revelation.
Gerald and I are the same age. We have been friends since high school. I wondered why the hell would this ugly closet case accuse Gerald and me of this and actually file a criminal complaint at Agate Precinct? And who the hell are all these people calling into the newsrooms? My mind was swirling. It was difficult to fathom that I was being attacked like this in what appeared to be a very strange and coordinated attack. And why were these conspirators attacking Gerald also? What the hell was going on? I asked that question several times between the moment Sabrina called and the next couple hours as I was trying to figure it all out. I was grateful to Oya, who assured me GPD would make no comment about the case because there was no case. And without a GPD comment, there was no story. No story, no worries. The last thing I needed, as I was newly unemployed and waiting for money to hit my joint bank account to start my new company, which was Candid News, of course, was the stain of false allegations that I was some sort of pedophile. I called my then boyfriend at work to tell him what was happening and the solution I proposed. I was not tone deaf to the political realities of his aunt's campaign for governor.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, who could that have been? A bank?
Aunt had to be a female. I'm not a biologist, but I'm just assuming.
Yeah, it was an aunt.
It was an aunt, yeah. Who ran for governor.
Yeah. Maybe one of our posters here on Facebook can crack that nut for us.
They are astute.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was going to suggest to him that we tell people we're no longer dating. At least I could clear my name in the case the rumors got out of hand. But before I could make that suggestion, he made it himself. It's one thing for me, the person going through such anxiety, to make the offer. It's quite another matter altogether for him to so callously ditch me. My heart fell, and I decided right then and there he wasn't the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. All right, let's head for Chicago for the 7th-inning stretch, and we'll come back to whatever the name of this bank is.
Here at Nimitz Towers, we're a large-scale rental complex. We have over 20 employees, and when the pandemic hit, our concerns were people not being able to work, loss of revenue and income, and luckily, due to PPP, we were able to keep all our employees employed, working. We were able to provide services, maintenance, and cleanliness for the building and the operation. Also, the rental assistance program helped us stay solvent during the pandemic and helped us keep the tenants in place.
We're thankful for Congressman San Nicolas advocating for these funds on our behalf in Washington, D.C.
If you have any concerns about any federal issues, feel free to contact your congressman's office.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Chicago, Wrigley Field, the world's most beautiful ballpark. I saw in the paper, saw online that the Cubs won their opener. What a wonderful way to start a season. It unfortunately may be their only win of the season. But anyhow.
I'm glad they started the season, finally.
Yeah, finally, yeah. Okay, so let's go back here to Troy's laying out of what I call Troy versus the Neocats. And as they say, the farther I get into this, the more you can say the plot thickens. We've got a guy who's working at a bank whose aunt is running for governor. And all of a sudden he tells, he gives Troy a Dear Troy letter, Dear John letter, right? And then as fate would have it, moments after that heartbreaking call, my friend who I was going to start candid with, Cutlass Pangolinan, called me with news about his research on the name of my accuser. The guy who said that Troy committed was a pedophile. The accuser worked, as it were, Cutlass worked his magic and found an obituary of my accuser's father. His grand uncle was then Archbishop Anthony Sablon Aperon. So Troy's accuser is Aperon's kinfolk. Yeah, it's getting a little bit more clear as we go along.
No coincidences.
It made sense. I wasn't the target at all. Troy's epiphany. I was not the target at all. I was just collateral damage and a way to get the story out faster. Now I knew why this idiot accused Gerald, too. Gerald Lujan, David's son. It had everything to do with his father, David Lujan, who represented people that sued Anthony Sablon Aperon. A few phone calls later from various sources confirmed what I never would have considered the neo-catechumenal way had manufactured and orchestrated the entire thing. That's what Troy said. It was a rude awakening or a bad epiphany that changed me and reduced my naivete about the world and so-called pious people. Now we know, if you follow the neo-catechumenal way, we know about pious people, don't we, Jose?
God rest his soul, but absolutely.
What was his? He was the
responsible for Guam.
The whole island.
The whole island. Everything went through him. And I have some stories of people who couldn't do anything, even professionally, until they went through him.
Well, I heard some gossip that people were in Apperon's office asking Apperon to do something, and he said, "Yeah, let me check with Father Pius."
That ain't no rumor.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was very pious. No, he's gone. Let's see. It was a rude awakening. The church that had victimized me as a child came back to hurt me in the most audacious ways, ironically to escape its misdeeds against me and so many others. I was elated, however, that I knew the truth of what was happening and that all was a non-issue. I called Sabrina and Gaynor and told them what I found out, and it was all done, or so I thought. By mid-afternoon, they called me back and asked for an official comment. GPD spokesman A.J. Balaja, who's also been accused, right, of sexual misconduct, right? A.J. Balaja told me, released a statement that indeed a person had filed a complaint at the Agate precinct against me. Now, there's probably another story involved in that, too. I was livid. It was a nightmare. A.J. said he was just doing what he was told to do.
Okay, I have to ask a question of inference.
Uh-huh.
Does this mean that A.J. Balaja is a part of the neo-catechumenal way?
Well, now he says he was just doing, I was just doing my job.
From
doing what I was told.
Who
That's
gave
what he
those
said.
instructions? Yeah, that's my curiosity.
Really?
Because, and if I can inject here too, you mentioned Troy's previous story of the abuse that happened to him as a kid, and how the reports were missing.
Yeah.
I wonder if this ties in.
I wonder. Yeah. I was livid. It was a nightmare. AJ said he was just doing what he was told to do. Oya said she was not informed GPD would be sending out that news release and that they shouldn't have. They couldn't even officially give me the name of my accuser because there's no actual criminal case. I never understood what the big deal was about the Neo sect until that day. That was the day I learned how evil that organization is and what I was supposed to do, and what was I supposed to do about it? What difference would it have made if I commented and told my story then? Rather than fight, I called a guy I knew who did drugs, and this is the part I'm going to leave out. This is once again Troy's statement against interest. A few days later, I did break up with that boyfriend. I never saw him as someone who would do this, but when my retirement money came in and hit our joint account a couple of days later, he took most of it. Well, he worked at a bank, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. And his aunt was running for governor.
Yeah. I couldn't start Candid anymore, at least not in September 2017. So then another declaration against interest, and he said, that's when I had enough. All I wanted in early 2017 when I decided to leave politics and join the private sector was to have a private and quiet life. Candid was not supposed to be a broadcast medium, but a website that published stories exposing corruption, and no one was ever supposed to see my face. I just wanted to be left alone. So much for me, as you were so much for that. I'm glad God placed me on the path that has led me here today. And, you know, it's ironic, and I suppose I don't have any room to say much of anything, but when Lieutenant Governor, Acting Governor Ray Tenorio caused Troy to be arrested, it may have really been the best thing that ever happened to him, because it seemed that it really turned him around. To the point where now he's famous for the right reasons. I'm glad that God placed me on the path that has led us here today. Johnny Rosario, Carlos, and I got articles of incorporation together, and in August 2018, we started Candid. Today, our audience numbers close to 50,000 viewers. God, he's got more viewers than I got tailgaters. It's close, though.
Very close.
Yeah. And readers on multiple platforms. Today, I'm able to tell this story and to defend other victims of the lies and conspiracies by the neo-catechumenal way, such as Tim Rohrer.
Duly documented on junglewatch.info.
That good man was falsely accused by the real predators of this island simply because he stood up to those bullies and worked for years to get the truth to all of us, which he did. I bet the people who attacked us never thought they'd see the day thousands of people would read these words from my hand and know that it is bold, hard truth. I was supposed to be discredited I was discredited no one along their path to false theocracy. The last two words, false theocracy. Well, yeah, it is indeed the bold, hard truth, which is kind of Troy's signature, isn't it? The bold, hard truth. Yeah, he's not going to start a company in competition with Dale Carnegie, whose famous book was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. He does influence people, though, that's for sure. And keep it up, Troy. Keep going. Okay, next item on the card is Christopher Phillips versus CNN. And this is something I got from Tom Wood's website, which is worth reading every day. It's always an ad, but it's always worth reading. He says, a single act of defiance by a college freshman taking under a minute just warmed my unfortunately cynical heart.
It was a dismantling.
Uh-huh. The Atlantic, which used to be called the Atlantic Monthly, till they went to 10 months out of the year instead of the whole year and changed their name to the Atlantic, which I read. There's some pretty good stuff in it, but it's also a good way to see what the other side is doing. The Atlantic sponsored a roundtable at the University of Chicago called Disinformation and the Erosion of Democracy. Now, when the Atlantic sponsors something called Disinformation and Erosion of Democracy, who do you think they're aiming at?
It's a satirical Broadway play.
Say again?
It's a satirical Broadway play.
No.
No.
You know, it's something that if you play bridge, you know a lot about. Trump. Yeah. So obviously the Atlantic was going to take off on Trump, like everybody on the left. Even Robert Underwood Robert Underwood couldn't write a column about geese and ganders without mentioning Donald Trump, right? And boast about his embracing critical race theory since 1972. The Atlantic sponsored a roundtable at the University of Chicago called Disinformation and the Erosion of Democracy. Well, that was a shade too Orwellian for this particular freshman who stood up and asked the following of CNN's Brian Stelter, one of the prime movers on CNN, Brian Stelter. And this is what he said. My name is Christopher Phillips. I am a first year at the college. You've all spoken extensively about Fox News being a purveyor of disinformation. I'm as surprised about that as Lou was about Chris's resolution, right? Fox News being a purveyor of disinformation. But CNN is right up there with them. They pushed the Russian collusion hoax. They pushed the Jussie Smollett hoax. They smeared Justice Kavanaugh as a rapist. And they also smeared Nick Sandmann. He's the guy that the Native American, remember that? Nick Sandmann as a white supremacist. And yes, they dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop affair as pure Russian information. and they all criticize Fox News, of course. With mainstream corporate journalists becoming little more than apologists and cheerleaders for the regime, is it time to finally declare that the canon of journalistic ethics is dead or no longer operative? All the mistakes of the mainstream media, and CNN in particular, this is CNN, seem to magically all go in one direction. Are we expected to believe that this is all just some sort of random coincidence? Or is there something else behind it? This guy's just a freshman in college, Christopher Phillips. Christopher, run for public office, please.
He hasn't been indoctrinated.
Yeah. Okay, so Tom Wood said, I wouldn't change a single word of that. Stelter meandered but never answered the question. Why are these alleged errors always in one direction? No response. Stelter's response began, quote, I think you're describing a different channel than the one I watch. But I understand there's a popular right-wing narrative about CNN. It didn't get any better than that. It's a classic case of systemic racism. He lays it all out. And yeah, but hey, Christopher, you forgot the narrative. Fox News bad, CNN good. Don't pay any attention to what people say, whether they're right or wrong, whether it's truth or fact. That's not important. Okay, so that's Tom Wood. All right, now going right along and going from Tom Wood and the University of Chicago, we'll just drive up the road from the University of Chicago. We'll jump on I-94 and drive up to Kenosha. So we'll go to Churchill Downs first, and then from Churchill Downs to Kenosha.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mescla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mescla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mescla.
Here at Nimitz Towers, we're a large-scale rental complex. We have over 20 employees, and when the pandemic hit, our concerns were people not being able to work, loss of revenue and income, and luckily, due to PPP, we were able to keep all our employees employed, working. We were able to provide services, maintenance, and cleanliness for the building and the operation. Also, the rental assistance program helped us stay solvent during the pandemic, helped us keep the tenants in place.
We're thankful for Congressman San Nicolas advocating for these funds on our behalf in Washington, D.C.
If you have any concerns about any federal issues, feel free to contact your congressman's office.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds. Thank you for the federal funds.
Paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. A couple furlongs more, and I'll be crossing the finish line into Never Land. But Jose and I will disappear for 70 hours. We'll almost become invisible because we won't be talking to you tailgaters out there in the international radio listening audience. But we'll be back big as life, twice as ugly on Monday at 1600. So make sure you're there. Okay, so I got about 10 more minutes here before we get to the finish line. The last item today is Kenosha versus critical race theory. And this is something that ran in the Western Journal. The title is The Red Wave Has Already Started. Riot-ravaged Kenosha elects Republican leader for first time in decades. Little explanation here. Some counties in Wisconsin have what's called a county executive, who is a county official, sort of like a mayor. But they're different constructions, but a county executive is sort of like a mayor. He's the guy that actually runs the county government. And now the county executive is, although oftentimes nonpartisan, a very important official. In Wisconsin politics, and I expect in a lot of other states, the situation is this. The highest elected official in the county is the sheriff. So the sheriff, in addition to having a gun and a badge, always has a lot of political power because he doesn't get to be sheriff if he doesn't have a lot of political power. Now, in the county I grew up, you elected the sheriff at the Republican primary because the Democrat, if the county was really squared away, a Democrat never had a chance for any office whatsoever except postmaster back in the days when the president appointed postmasters. So when there was a Democrat president, you'd have one of the half dozen Democrats in town appointed postmaster. But anyhow, back to this story. It's a local election that should be national news, but the mainstream media isn't interested. Voters in Kenosha, which became famous for its 2020 riots and the 2021 prosecution of Kyle Rittenhouse for defending himself during the violence of 2020, went to the polls Tuesday to elect a Republican who campaigned partially on linking her Democrat opponent to the failures of the Biden administration and the liberal status quo.
She's Republican and female.
Exactly. Now, I don't know the really important thing here. Maybe the story will tell us. Democrats have to hope it's not a sign for November. According to the Kenosha News, Republican State Rep Samantha Kirkman defeated Democrat Clerk of Circuit Courts Rebecca Matoska-Mentic with more than 51% of the 29,000 votes cast. It was the first time since at least 1998 that the Republican has won the seat, according to Fox News. The Associated Press reported it was the first time ever that a Republican had won. Leave it to the Associated Press. Here's a quote. Republican-backed candidate Samantha Kirkman elected to Kenosha County's first female county executive, a swing county in a swing state. Donald Trump was the first Republican presidential nominee to win the county since Richard Nixon. The race is officially nonpartisan, but as noted by WITI-TV, the Fox affiliate in Milwaukee, both women had been identified with their political parties for years. And according to WGTD-FM, a public radio in Kenosha, at least one flyer from the Kirkman campaign explicitly tied the race to Democrat President Joe Biden's White House and Democrat Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers. Linking Matoska-Mentic with the failed Biden-Evers agenda, according to WGTD, the flyer accused the Democrat of being part of the, quote, liberal status quo that has failed to keep us safe. Now, I got to refresh recollections here. going back to CNN, if you were watching any CNN coverage, if Fox actually ran this CNN coverage on Fox News, otherwise I had never seen it, but there was a Fox News story where the chyron said, mostly peaceful demonstration, and the commentator was saying the same thing, and there was a burning building in the background. Mostly peaceful demonstration.
Well, you can't expect us to have eyes behind the back of our heads.
This is true. The fact that Biden and Evers disgraced themselves in their public office with their handling of the Kenosha riots and the Rittenhouse criminal case could not have escaped the attention of Kenosha voters. Considering the mayhem unleashed across the country by leftists in 2020, it's easy for all of the rioting to run together. But Kenosha exploded into violence after a police shooting involving a man named Jacob Blake during an August 23, 2020 encounter that turned violent. Blake has been paralyzed since. In the rioting that followed, Rittenhouse killed two men who attacked him, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum, both with felony convictions on their records. A third man, Gage Grosskreutz, was wounded in the shooting. Also a man with a long criminal record, he testified at the Rittenhouse trial that the then 17-year-old did not shoot him until he pointed his gun at Rittenhouse's face.
That was his testimony.
Yeah, but of course, Joe Biden knew better. Yeah. Rittenhouse was a white supremacist. That's why he did it. Biden with absolutely no evidence to back it up, infamously depicted Rittenhouse as a, quote, white supremacist in a September 2020 Twitter post following his first debate with then-President Donald Trump. A jury declared Rittenhouse innocent of all charges in relation to the shooting in November 2021. Evers immediately issued a statement that all but denounced jurors for their decision and treated Huber, Rosenbaum, Grosskreutz, and Blake as the real victims in the case. Quote, no verdict will be able to bring back the lives of Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum, or Gage Grosskreutz injuries, just as no verdict can heal the wounds or trauma experienced by Jacob Blake and his family, Evers' statement said. No ruling, quote, no ruling today changes our reality in Wisconsin that we have work to do towards equity, accountability, and justice. The communities across our state are demanding and deserve. I'm going to stop telling people I'm from Wisconsin. When Scott Walker was governor, I wore it like a badge. Yeah, there's no way from the outside to know how much Kirkman's flyer changed voters' minds, and the mainstream has invested precious little time finding out. But there seems little doubt that residents of a county that saw about $50 million in damage over the course of rioting,
mostly peaceful
rioting, looting, and arson, not to mention national attention, much of it hostile during the Rittenhouse trial, would not take it into account. On Tuesday, they made their choice, and that has to have Democrats who are already looking at grim midterm elections in November very nervous. In addition to the county executive race, conservatives also picked up seats on the Kenosha School Board, according to the Associated Press. Many social media users celebrated the results. One wrote, "The red wave has already started. Kenosha goes red and goes national. Kenosha County, ravaged by BLM riots, flips red after decades of Democrat leadership." That's from Vicki McKenna. And we have another one from somebody called American Conservative. "Kenosha just elected its first Republican county executive ever. The tide has turned. Please keep voting and keep the momentum. And then another one. It has been just over 1 year, and the world had enough of the destruction from the Democrats. The red wave has already started. That's from D. Kenosha County, ravaged by BLM riots, flips red after decades, etc. At the end of the day, all politics is local, and extrapolating national results from individual races can be a dangerous business. However tempting it might be to see the Kenosha elections as a proxy for a national referendum on Democrat rule. Okay, I'd like to finish this, but Jose and I are going to do our disappearing act here. So it's time for me to tell you this. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Russia removed from a UN commission. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. United Nations members voting Thursday to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council.
That vote was in response to global outrage over atrocities committed by Russian troops in Bucha. Bodies are still being retrieved from the rubble, and the Ukrainian government releasing what it claims are intercepted radio recordings of a Russian commander instructing soldiers to, quote, take out civilians in a village outside Mariupol. It comes just a day after the mayor of Mariupol said more than 5,000 civilians have been killed in the city.
Fox's Griff Jenkins in western Ukraine. Fox News correspondent Benjamin Hall making his first public comments since being wounded covering the war last month. Posting on social media from a hospital in Texas, he's lost half of one leg, his foot from the other leg, his hand is being repaired. He can't see out of one eye and his hearing is pretty blown. But Hall adds he feels damn lucky. His colleagues, cameraman Pierre Zakshevsky and producer Sasha Kushinova, were killed when their vehicle came under attack outside the Ukrainian capital. History Thursday in Washington as the Senate voted to confirm Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Jackson becomes the 116th justice to serve on the Supreme Court. She weathered hearings which were more contentious than many expected. Now, only 3 Republicans voted yes: Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitt Romney. Collins and Murkowski had voted to confirm Jackson before. The Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, he had said that GOP members were concerned about Jackson's views on a litany of issues. Now, the court won't seat Jackson until the summer. Justice Stephen Breyer won't step down until the court finishes its term.
Fox's Chad Pergram at the Capitol. Wall Street rebounding Thursday. The Dow gained 87 points. NASDAQ up 8. The S&P 500 closed 19 points higher. Crude oil prices staying below $100 a barrel. America is listening to Fox News.
How quickly did you become scared out of your wits?